Theological Seminary and Fordham University, where she's pursuing dual masters in divinity and social work. She's the proud mother of 5 sons and a child advocate for children with learning disabilities. She's worked in the nonprofit sector for more than 15 years with at-risk youth against gang violence and bullying. She has a BA in psychology from the City College of New York and is currently the senior consultant at Refoy consulting firm in New York City. So go ahead, Sanayi.
Good evening, everyone. I guess I come from a different perspective. I'm actually a parent who has 5 young African-American boys who live in New York City. And I guess my experience, not only as an educator and an advocate for teenagers and working around violence and gang violence prevention, but I also have firsthand experience. So when, I live here in Harlem, lived here all of my life, and when we think of police, we usually would assume that they're there to keep us safe. But particularly in my community, when a mom or a young person think of police, we don't necessarily think of safety. We think probably we would become a victim of violence by them, opposed to the person hanging out on the corner. We feel a lot more safe with the drug dealers on the corner than we do with police in our communities. And it's an unfortunate thing, but for me, I think I'm more concerned with the perspective of changing a mindset. Because I think when we think of police and we think of how they police our communities, we, the victims of those actions, a lot of times feel as though this is just how it is. This is what it is. This is how it's been for people of color. And we sort of, in some aspects, learn how to live with it. And I'm going to share my story and how I learned to deal with that. My oldest son is 25 years old. So I have a 25, 20, 15, 6, and 4. And when my 25-year-old and my 20-year-old were 7 and 9, they attended a school outside of Harlem. They went to school on 84th Street and Park Avenue, and a bus would pick them up every morning. And this particular morning, the bus didn't pick them up. Normally they would stand in front of the building and the bus would come regularly, so I had to leave early. But the bus didn't pick them up, and as a result, they had to take the city bus from 135th Street and Broadway to 84th Street and Park Avenue. So as they got off the bus to cross the street to go to their school, they were stopped by 2 police officers at gunpoint, searched, and told that they did not go to school in that community. That they were lying, and my oldest son at the time was very upset. So once he got into the school building, the principal called me very upset and said to me exactly what happened. And it was a wake-up call for me, because growing up in Harlem, you have this notion of you work hard, you educate yourself, and you can have the same life that everyone else has. And it was that older Jewish principal who said to me, I don't know what the conversation is that you have with little black boys, but I think it's time that you have it now, Sanayi. And as I walked away from that conversation, I began to look at my life very differently. Because when you bring children in the world, you bring them in the world with the assumption that they will grow up, be successful, and be able to move around in their community without feeling harassed or possibly losing their lives at the hands of someone else's ignorance. And that experience, when the police officer told the principal, the principal asked my son what happened, and my son said, well, the police officer, searched me. I don't have ID. He's 9 years old. What 9-year-old has an ID? I don't have ID. They were going to arrest me. I kept telling him I was 9. He kept telling me I was 14 or older. And he told me I didn't go to school here. And the cop said to the principal, you're lucky I didn't arrest him, because in New York City, you're not supposed to walk around with no ID. He had no ID. I could arrest him and put him in the system. So just be grateful that I didn't arrest him and I brought him across the street to you. And so he said to him, what 9-year-olds are going to get ID? He said, you can get a non-driver's ID for him. You need to tell his mother to get a non-driver's ID, because if I see him again, I'm going to arrest him. And it was at that point, I didn't even know a 9-year-old child can get a New York State non-driver's ID. So I'm now taking my children in at 9 and 10 to get an ID, create a wallet, teaching them at 9 years old, you have to walk around with a wallet with your ID, my information, because if you're stopped, you can be arrested. And for me, it became a reality because my son was 9, but at 9, he was already 5'6". By the time he was 14, he was 6'3". He's now 25 and 6'10", playing basketball overseas, but you don't see the reality of how he could possibly become a victim of what he spoke about being arrested with no ID and put in a cell with grown men. One of my very close friends, her son also, at 12 years old, was arrested, going to school on a train, used his bus pass. They assumed that he was not going to school that day. He had no ID to prove that he was 12 years old. This was years ago when middle school kids did not get an ID. They arrested him. She had him missing for 3 days, but he was in central booking in a cell with grown men, terrified, because they couldn't find him in the system. He was saying he was 12, they were saying he was older, and when it all came out, when they finally gave him a phone call, because they didn't even give him a phone call, 3 days later, they found out he was 12 years old. So it's in those instances that we think, as parents, something simple as ID could save your child's life. So I had to work and think of ways, how can I actually protect my children from the system? Because as young African American men, there are so many things that are set up to get them in the system way before they even decide to do a crime. You know, whether it's stopping them on the street or having a conversation at 10 with my son, if the cops stop you, you don't take your hands out. It's those kind of things that we as parents are tackling, but we're not sharing those stories with each other. And I think you have to not only change the mindset of the police officers, but you have to change the mindset of the people who are being victimized by it. Because particularly people of color assume this is the police, this is what they do. And we learn, it's sort of like the elephant in the room, we learn how to work around the elephant instead of moving the elephant out of the room. And I think you have to come to a place where you, one, educate yourself on what the rules are and how to protect your children, but also say, this has got to change, and it has to start with me. So it's at that point that we have to really think about, what can we do? Because a lot of times we suffer in silence. It's my kid, your kid, but we don't kind of come together in a way. So I think when you think about things or ways to combat against the way police treat people, we need to think of ways to become more active in the community and stand up for each other and help to educate those in our community who may not know what the rules are or how to protect their kids. So that's what I had to share. If you want to talk about ways as parents or people in the community to come up with that, I would love to have that discussion with you. Thank you.